Welcome to the Pulpit and Porch, previously known as the Small Church Podcast. I'm Tony Marr, and with me is my friend Robert Kell.
Hey everyone, we're glad you're here. The Pulpit and Porch is where we kick back, put up our feet, and talk about real life stuff of ministry, faith, community, and maybe a little sports and pop culture.
Yeah, if you're expecting a perfectly polished sermon, you're probably in the wrong place.
We're more about those honest heart-to-heart conversations, like the ones you'd have on the front porch with friends. Sometimes we stay on track, and sometimes we take the scenic route.
That's half the fun, isn't it? Here we tackle the highs, the lows, and the in-betweens of church and of life. Every now and then, we'll welcome a few friends to the front porch and share stories and ideas that might just change the way that you see things.
So whether you're a pastor, a church leader, or just someone who loves the church, pull up a chair, grab some sweet tea, and let's dive in. Welcome to the Pulpit and Porch. We've got a seat waiting for you.
Welcome into the Pulpit and Porch. I am your host, Tony Marr, and today we've got a special episode for you. When we recorded part 2 of our episode on Lent, we got a little carried away at the beginning of our episode, talking about something that is very near and dear to the hearts of both Robert and myself, and that is the game of baseball. And while we don't shy away from straying outside of things ministry related on the Pulpit and Porch, in fact, it's some of our listeners' favorite parts of the show is when we get off script a little bit and spend time talking about movies or TV or pop culture or sports. And a lot of times we start every episode talking about sports or pop culture in some way. This last episode, we got a little carried away and we spent over 20 minutes going on rants and discussions and thoughts on baseball and rule changes and everything that goes into that. And when we wrapped the episode, Robert and I were talking and saying, that was a really good episode, but people that are not interested in the sports side of things may tune out before they get to the discussion on Lent. And we felt like that discussion was important. We felt like that discussion carried over from the previous episode. And we had so many comments from listeners on the first episode on Lent that we didn't want people to tune out before they got to that. But we also really enjoyed our conversation on baseball. So we thought that we would take some time and make it 2 episodes. So this week, you're getting a special edition of the Pulpit and Porch. It's a shorter episode than usual that focuses strictly on our conversation that we had on baseball. So if you're a huge fan of sports, baseball, or you just like listening to Robert and I discuss and debate a little bit on the intricacies of the greatest game that has ever been created, then you'll enjoy this episode of the Pulpit and Porch. If not, you can simply just skip it and tune in next week for another edition of the Pulpit and Porch podcast. So thanks for listening. Enjoy this discussion on the great American pastime.
Yo,
we've got a problem.
You told me we had one the other day. Is this the other day, the thing I'm getting ready to get yelled at about?
I heard from some people very close to you.
Yeah, my boys apparently threw me under the bus with something.
That you have a thought that Major League Baseball should instill a run rule.
So I definitely had that conversation. And here's what's hilarious.
What is wrong with you?
Here's what's hilarious is if you would, like, I'm trying to think who I was watching. Just you and I both have MLB TV, and so we both watch probably too much baseball. And then we're in the middle. If there's such a thing, I don't know. And then we're in the middle of we're over now with March Madness, and so we've had a lot of sports in our life. The draft is like 2 weeks out, and
which, by the way, I won my pool.
You won yours. Good job, Brody. Yep. 1 hour. So my middle son,
back-to-back champs,
1 hours and the other day. So he's
Madness.
He's picking his dessert of choice as we speak, but not as we speak. Like
right now, he's doing it.
This moment. Like 2 days ago at dinner, he's like, "Here's what I want." Melissa's like, "We can make that happen." And so I was watching baseball. It might have been Sunday night. And they're literally having a conversation in a game that is like 12, 15 runs. Like it is 14-2 or something like that. And the announcers have nothing to talk about. It is a miserable game to watch. It is so bad. And they're going, so maybe they should do a run rule. And I'm like, I just had this conversation with you all and y'all thought I was crazy. And here are MLB announcers having this conversation. If I could think of the game, I will. There's also a tension of it might not have been on MLB TV. It might have been on ESPN. So you could go in though at the end of the game and you could listen to their conversation around it. And here's what's even funnier. I am the grumpiest old man, and I have been for years around any change. I still hate interleague play. I hate the fact like that used to, when I was a kid, you played one American League team a year for one series and maybe a home and away. So maybe 6 games. So you play 162 games and 6 of them. And so you play 156 games against 14 other teams. Is that right? There's 30 MLB teams. I sometimes get confused between all the things. I loved that. I hated when they changed that, went to interleague play. I don't like the pitch clock per se. Baseball was developed. I was trying to think through some of this recently, and I'm not very good sometimes with like historically when TVs came out and all of those things. When did people really start to have them in their homes? Was that in the 50s?
Yeah.
Baseball had already been around for 50 plus years at that point in time. And baseball was invented in a season of life where you sat around a radio and you listened to a game and you tinkered on the car and you had, something that you just, 8 inches long by 4 inches tall by 4 inches deep that had a little knob and it played sound out, and you were working on your car, you were fixing your lawnmower, cleaning out the garage, and you plugged it in and you listened to a game that took hours. And people just can't handle being bored anymore. And I don't think baseball is boring. I think it's fantastic. But we've had to put up nets because people kept getting hit in faces because they're staring at phones. They've paid what I think is absurd amounts of money to go to games. And they're sitting in seats that are so close that they are literally getting hit in the face and having to be carted out with blood pouring down them because they don't want to sit and watch. In that, the conversations for me come around more of and this is unfortunate, I don't like the idea. The conversation comes around just like pitch clocks, just like you can only throw to first base twice. You can't change pitchers, but ever so often they have to pitch so many batters before. Like, I loved it back in the day when I'm going to bring in this guy. He's going to throw one batter because it's a left-right matchup, and then we're going to switch the next pitcher. That's just the strategy of the game. I'm glad they got rid of the shift. I thought that was
the shift.
It was bonkers. But I think that in a world of
but even within the shift, there was great strategy there.
Yeah.
And if if the hitters could have adapted, they could have destroyed the shift and taken it away organically. But none of them could.
None of them
figure out how to lay down a bunt.
Yeah, and that was the thing that you always saw is the one reel that you always see is they had shifted him and he slap bunted it down third baseline and got like a triple because the entire field was shifted over to like second base, even the outfielders. And so I think that that's the tension is how do you look at people that aren't mine and your age that are 20 something years old and go, how do we still have baseball be valid? And how do we fill these monstrous stadiums in 25 years when you and I hope you and I are both, and you're younger than I am, so you probably still will be and healthier than I am. But in the next 25, 30 years, as you and I get to these later parts or potentially end of our life, how do they keep baseball here? And those are the things I think that for me, they're going to have to do this stuff. I remember in this, like it was a lengthy conversation. I was sitting here listening going, you all have this game is so bad. You have nothing to talk about. And they were going, yeah,
I think that's on the announcer, because that was the beauty. I agree. You talk about radio. My memories growing up were I had a little turn dial clock radio that sat on my nightstand in my bed my entire life from all the way through graduating from high school. And during the baseball season, every single night that was tuned to AM 570 and listening to Vin Scully call. And it didn't matter what was going on in the game. Vin Scully had a story. He could tell a story about the grass and the flowers growing and the smells of the field. And even though you couldn't see it through the radio, you could see it in your mind. He painted such a beautiful picture. And every time Vin Scully opened his mouth, it was engaging and enriching to your heart. And I think that so many broadcasters have missed that now. And so I think that's you being bored in the broadcast because they had nothing to talk about isn't on the game. I think it's on.
Well, I was intrigued by the conversation because I love looking at things of going, what's the future? Like what's next? Literally we have a podcast that's part of what we talk about is what's going on? How are people in the church? How are
just
leaders
so you know, I could do an
it?
entire podcast on baseball.
Oh,
I could do a whole podcast. I could sit around with you for 3 hours every week and talk about baseball.
Oh, especially
not just the Dodgers.
No,
just
baseball.
The game of baseball.
Yeah. We talk about this. We probably need to launch a sports thing and just talk about sports all the time. We should just do it from like 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. We could do it daily.
I like to sleep.
I think though that's the tension for me. Is I don't disagree. I think these guys are looking at stuff too, and a little bit of, you're pitching a left fielder. You've got your third string shortstop. Your AAA team's down the street. You called up a guy and said, "Hey, run up here real quick. We're going to throw you in to pitch." And it's the assistant manager's water boy's son. You're just trying to fill the space because you don't want to waste a good arm because the game's coming back. And I think when we get to that point, they were talking about and I hated this too. Like, this is Major League Baseball, but when they played a doubleheader, like the Braves and the Marlins, I think have to do a makeup here because of all the rain from this past weekend. They do a makeup here in August, which is a long time away. And they used to be 2 7-inning games. And they took it away from 2 9-inning games. And I'm like, this is already a grueling 162 game season. You're telling me that 4 innings? And what's hilarious is a lot of those games would end up going into extra innings. Yeah. And so they end up playing 9 anyway. And it's like, you're telling me that's where it's at. So I don't know. Yes, we had that conversation. I don't know that I'm a fan of it, but I like making my boys think, especially one of them in particular, that always has an answer, always knows, always right. And I just like pushing the buttons a little bit to go, hey, think critically.
Yeah, your boys
about
couldn't
this.
Wait to tell me about that.
You're
not going to believe what our dad wants baseball to put into place. I
don't know that I want that to happen. It will not surprise me when it does. I would
love to see the statistics on what the percentages are of the number of games that would actually qualify under your qualifications. And I don't even know what you think that they were telling me that you said you had some methodology that
take the last 40 years and what is the largest deficit, plural, what's the largest deficit of a game in the last 40 years? What's the, and on the larger end of that, and they have ways of doing this stuff. I don't even know how to word all of this correctly. But what's that average when your team's getting blown out? What is the average? What's the largest victory out there? Take that plus a couple of runs. And if it's like no one has ever come back from this number, if someone was down blank runs, no one has ever come back from that. This isn't a 7-game series where you're going, oh, well, if the Yankees get up 3-0, tell the Red Sox it's over because no one's ever come back. You're still playing the game at that point in time. These are professional baseball players. They're like, it's not high school baseball or not even college baseball where if the Dodgers get up 12 runs, that Mookie and, Freddie and on down, Will Smith, all these guys are going to the bench because they're going to let the backups play, and then they can't sub back in. Like, this isn't like it's always blown my mind in the NFL when a team's up what I feel like is a substantial amount, like sometimes 20 some points, and your starting quarterback is still out there handing the ball off. Like, did you not see what happened to Aaron Rodgers 2 years ago?
Yeah, well, it just happened the other night in the Lakers game. The Lakers were playing the Oklahoma City Thunder, and they were up massive amounts of points. And the Lakers broadcasters were livid with JJ Redick because we still had Luka and LeBron and Austin Reeves in the game, and they were screaming in the microphone saying, the Lakers deserve to have someone get hurt right now because you're up by 30 points with 4 minutes left in the game and you still have them in.
Well, did you see what happened? And we are the worst time stampers in the world. Last night, the Bucks were down 24 in the fourth quarter, and Giannis and the team came back and won.
That's why.
But
that
but
right
this
there
isn't
is why.
But that's not baseball.
Dodgers in the World Series to the Yankees, Game 5, were down 5-0, and we came back and won the game.
Yeah, but 5 runs is a grand slam and one other home run. Like, it's not uncommon. How many times in a week do baseball teams get the bases loaded? I mean, it's a dozen. I mean, it's so many times.
Which is why I think that at that level, a run rule
but if
doesn't work.
If you're talking at 7 innings at 20 runs, by the way, we've got to move on from this. There's no one, I don't know, there's 7 people of our listeners that are maybe interested in this conversation. Half of them hate me, half of them really support you, which means they also hate me. And there's one that's going, maybe this makes sense. But we're talking, if it's 15 or 20 runs at 7 innings, the chances of you even getting that many batters to the plate is almost unheard of. And it's only because hitting a baseball, and most people will say this, being a defensive back in the NFL or high D1 football is incredibly hard. Like, hitting a baseball has been said to be the hardest thing to do in sports, hitting especially a major league fastball. I just think that to barrel a ball up perfectly is so incredibly complicated. Coming back from that level of run down is unheard of. And that's why I think that
here's the other side of it that I want you to look at, though, and then we'll move on.
No, we're not, because I'm going to respond to this.
When I take my family to a baseball game, it's costing several $100s for us to go. The experience is what we're paying for. I can watch the game at home. I have MLB League Pass or whatever it's called, extra innings. And so I can sit and watch it at home. It's the experience. It's the sights. It's the smells. It's the hearing the crack of the bat. It's going and getting a hot dog and sitting down and having those moments with my family. And so if you're now going to tell me that I've paid $400 to be there, I've got my hot dog in my hand and my drink is only 2/3 of the way drunk, and now you're going to say game's called because of a run rule. I want a refund. I don't
argue that at all. And even in high school, sometimes when you're playing non-conference games, it can end in 3 innings if it's 15 or 18 runs. Now, it takes a long time for high school kids to score 15 runs. And so it's not lost on me what I'm saying. Melissa was texting with some friends last night, and they were playing. They're a big high school, but they were playing one of the 2 or 3 biggest high schools in the entire state. And it was like the first inning, and they were already down 11-0. And like, this bigger school was just, this really good baseball school was killing them. And so, it can take a little bit of time, but you go 3 innings. And I'm like, and again, I understand the difference between $6 a ticket and $60 a ticket, but I paid $6 to get into this, and I'm going home in 3 innings. I didn't get to watch anything. That was boring.
We have season tickets every year to our local local rookie league team. And most of the time in those games, you don't even know what the score is. You're not even really paying attention to the score. You're there for the atmosphere. You're there for the experience. You're there for the memories that you're creating with your friends and your family. And I'm disappointed. They do in that league, in that Appalachian league that we're a part of, Sunday games are only 7 innings. And I hate that Sunday games are only 7 innings because I feel like I'm getting ripped off. I want more time. I want more time to sit there. I want more time to soak in the atmosphere. I want more time to look at my wife or my sons that are sitting there beside me and just soak in the fact that we're at the ballpark right now.
I think it's interesting, and then we'll transition because I think this might be a good point or a good way to kind of segue this thing. You were such an experienced guy.
True.
And like everything, like getting up and getting your morning coffee is like an emotional, spiritual experience for you. And I mean, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I've told you,
true.
I've told you privately, and I guess I'll say it here. Like there are things like that you model for me and for other leaders that I think we need to step back and take note. In that, it's also the thing that some of us can go, Tony's bonkers. And
my wife would be one of those people.
I know I've said this before. It was one day we were joking about something, and literally we have 4 there's 5 of us in my house, and we pull for 4 different NFL teams. And we were talking about that, and somebody went, that must be nice. And I was like, I don't know why. And they're like, oh, that would never happen in a Tony Marr house. And it's like, everyone is going to pull for the Seattle Seahawks and it will be great and you'll love it. And here it is. And so everyone is a Dodgers fan. Like, get that Braves junk out of my house. And we are all Lakers. We are all UNLV. I mean, and I'm not saying it's quite that level of dictatorship, but
it is.
Maybe it's close.
It is.
And so I think that like that thing
3 of the kids don't live in the house anymore because
they're like don't want to deal
with a Braves hat on.
Yeah. They have been moved. So I think that's the thing. And in that same way, I mean, it's just that. How do you kind of live life in that way of being so passionate about something?
Well, it is all the time that we have for this special edition of the Pulpit and Porch podcast. We hope that you enjoyed this discussion on baseball. We would love to hear your thoughts on the run rule, on the shift, on the pitch clock, anything else that you might want to chime in about if you're a baseball fan, if you like the Los Angeles Dodgers or you despise the Los Angeles Dodgers. We'd love to hear your feedback. Hey, if you've got anything else going on in your life, in your world that you would like to discuss with us, you can find us at higherministries.com, or you can find us on Facebook or Instagram at the Pulpit and Porch. We would love to hear your thoughts. We would love to hear your feedback, and we'd love for you to be a part of this discussion. We want to encourage you to like the Pulpit and Porch podcast, subscribe to the Pulpit and Porch podcast, and share our show with your friends. Again, thanks for tuning in, listening to us, and next week we'll be right back with another regular edition talking about ministry and life and probably a little bit of sports. Have a great rest of your week.